This isn't audible. This is different means, and it might just be better, goddamn. So, all right, law number one. Yeah. Never outshine the master. Always make those above you feel comfortably superior. In your desire to please or impress them, do not go too far in displaying your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite, inspire fear and insecurity. Make your masters appear more brilliant than they are, and you will attain the heights of power. Okay, so we were trying to figure out if it made sense to bounce around point from point, try to go in sequential order. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to bounce around the ones that make sense as we're flowing this discussion. But this very first law, and we had a conversation several months ago where you were in a situation, and it's telling that this is the first law in this book because we are social creatures. By nature, humans, we organize in groups, right? Tribes, communities, cities, families, and this concept of never outshining the master, and this is the other thing for everybody to keep in mind. This book, these laws, be mindful of how you interpret them because they're coming through the filter of you, right? These laws in and of themselves, this is just recommendations. And the other cool thing about this book, if you've never read it, is every law has parables, not even parables, they have stories, historic events that demonstrate these laws. And this first one about never outshining the master is very interesting for an individual who wants to be master of themselves, right? Which I think is a large part of our audience. Whether you're an entrepreneur or, you're a father, you're a mother, you're an older brother, older sibling, if you're in some leadership role, it can feel very unnatural to not outshine the master. You, in fact, may not have a quote unquote master above you, but I think what's really at the core of this law is people's insecurity. And I think if people look and interpret this law from that lens, it really just highlights how insecure people who should maybe be the least insecure actually can be. Because this law, the way it's written out, as I interpret it, is basically just saying, when you're in a situation, let's give a concrete example, let's say somebody's the second shooter on a set. There's the first shooter, maybe the first shooter's not even the director. You got to be careful how you navigate that relationship because usually those people who are put in that position of power, there may be an underlying fear that they can lose that position of power. And that fear is going to make them potentially behave in such a way that they're going to, be on the lookout for any potential threat to their status. And so if you walk in as the second shooter and you're more technically prowess than the first shooter, you got more experience than the first shooter, you have quote unquote better work, or preferred work, better gear. The first shooter might be like, fuck, damn, I thought I was number one though. You got all that, you got the new hotness, you got the goddamn Canon RS 1347, goddamn with the 17 to infinity lens, fuck. And then maybe they wind up trying to sabotage you to make sure that they can put additional distance between your efforts and their position. Because they may be playing a zero-sum game where they think that for you to rise up in ranks means that they must be dethroned. And then that can put you in a perilous situation when all you are maybe trying to do is be helpful, be super prepared, you know what I mean? Be a good supporting agent. But, sometimes people misinterpret that and they can take that as a threat. And then they may start to behave in a way that threatens you. So, yeah, man, those are just some initial thoughts. Obviously, we could take a fucking day and talk about each of these laws, but yeah, man.
Yeah, a couple more examples of this this never outshining the master. It can be seen in in work. It can also be seen in a gym. Very quickly, you can be in a scenario where you're with other high performing individuals. / you could be sitting and working amongst professional athletes, and you yourself could not be a professional athlete. But if you're doing something that they might have a budding insecurity on, they might start to feel some type of way. We've going to even just local CrossFit competitions. It's quite hilarious when there's a team or there's an individual that has some sort of physical prowess or has some sort of namesake in the space. I mean, you can see this with bodybuilding. You can see this with coaching of any of these places. Mm-hmm. They have namesake. And if you come on to the scene or the stage or what have you, and you outshine them, not because you're trying to take them down while you're going up, but you just lean in and you push yourself forward to be the best that you can be, oftentimes that other individual, because of their insecurities, because of something else that's going on, will have some dumb shit to say about what you're doing, interact with you in some manner that is not necessarily a reflection of you, and could actually throw off your energy if you're not prepared for it. So there is definitely an interesting breakdown when you look at you being in these situations where you might have a quote unquote leader, more of a manager. This you could see this in the bar too. I mean, all my time in the bar scene, and then my time in law enforcement. Many people, when I walk in the back door and I start translating Spanish and doing legal paperwork for a sheriff's office that has 4 out of the 200 people that work there have a college degree, there are more than a handful of people that feel some type of way about that. You come in and you're quote unquote more educated. You've got this, you've got that, you've got things that they wish they had, but they haven't necessarily either taken the time to go after them, or they don't feel that they can go after them, so they pivoted and gone a different direction, or they want to do something but they're not willing to swallow their pride and ask you how to get to a better spot in what they envy in you. It can create a lot of problems. So it is also interesting to check your own ego when you're in these situations, because you doing your best can be misinterpreted as you being braggadocious and you being full of ego very quickly. It's also just not, I don't believe, 100% necessary to talk about your accomplishments day in, day out.
Yeah.
You can be a high-performing individual, and you can be involved in a lot of spaces, know a lot of people, have a fat-ass bank account, have crypto going to Mars. You don't have to talk about it all the time. People are going to judge you based on the lens that they see themselves in, and it's very funny because in these situations, most of those people, they have some sort of insecurity, and you are just the manifestation of that insecurity because they don't have what you have. It's something that they want, and we don't have to spend too much time more on this first one, but this comes in the form of the green monster very, very quickly and very often, especially with individuals that sometimes have risen to a level of power or a level of leadership or management or what have you, not necessarily undeservedly, but in a manner that was quick, and they don't really know how to handle it. They haven't evolved as their role has evolved. So you see this, like, your blessings start to get blocked. People start acting a certain way towards you. You start to not get scheduled for shifts in a certain way. You start to not be able to use the gym floor in a certain way when certain people are in there. Something to be aware of, because you might be able to affirm those individuals in other ways. Stop talking about your accomplishments and just get in there and do the work. And just by you, and yielding is not the right word, but just by you changing the way that you communicate with them, and even if you know the answer to something, asking their opinion because they are your superior could do a world of service to the relationship and the hierarchy there, and potentially not make someone feel so insecure. Or it could do nothing, but it doesn't hurt to try, Definitely doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's a complex situation because it's unnatural for somebody to want to throttle themselves down, especially just because they're trying to be considerate of this other person. But depending on what your end game is, if you want to move higher up, if you want to have good relationships with these people, then it's like, this might be one of those tools you break out of the war chest and leverage it to your ability.
There's sacrifices that have to be made for sure. Yeah. But it's all, it comes back to your intention and then your end game, your intention and how you want to get there. I mean, it's important.
Facts.